Wish TV. All Indiana Politics
is your premier source for Indiana politics.
Focusing on issues that matter to you.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage, exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders, expert analysis on critical legislation. From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. I'm Phil Sanchez. Multiple Republican state senators facing swatting calls and threats of violence. This after the Senate likely killed any chance of redrawing Indiana's congressional maps before next year's election. As our Garrett Berquist reports, the targeted lawmakers all have something in common.
Senator Spencer Deary of West Lafayette says he learned around 8 o'clock Thursday morning someone had reported domestic abuse at his address. Deary says it is disturbing that anyone would attempt to harm or intimidate lawmakers, but sadly not all that surprising in the current environment. We will continue to do our duty and to do what is in the best interest of our district, no matter the threats. Deary says someone sent an unpaid pizza to his address the night before. He says he suspects it was to convey his address is known.
We had a heads up from our chief about this going on other places throughout the state, and so officers responding already knew what to expect, that that this was kind of a known thing, and made contact and made sure that everything was fine.
Senators Dan Durnell and Rick Niemeyer also faced swatting calls around the same time. That evening, Lawrence Senator Kyle Walker announced someone tried to threaten violence at his home, though he would not elaborate. And a Sunday incident targeted Terre Haute Senator Greg Good. Swatting is when someone falsely reports an emergency at a targeted location and tries to generate as large-scale a response as possible.
So it's to the surprise, especially of the homeowner or any visitors, of course to law enforcement, because they're going and anticipating something happening in that mindset.
Deary has consistently said he opposes redrawing Indiana's congressional maps mid-decade. The other senators targeted have not taken a public stance. Here's what Senate President Pro Tempore Rod Bray said on Tuesday regarding the call that targeted Good.
I absolutely condemn that activity. It's abhorrent that he, but in particular his wife and his son, would have to go through that experience. So I have no defense to that whatsoever, and we in our society need to make sure that the dialogue we have is civil, even when there's a disagreement. Civility and substance is what we need to be doing in our political universe.
Governor Mike Braun briefly addressed the incidents in comments early Thursday.
We can stand for none of that. This is about a political discussion that can't have any of that. And now that it's occurred for the third time, that's way beyond the pale, unacceptable. It shouldn't be having that involved with it. What can be done to prevent it, I don't know. But all I'm saying is, Governor, leader of the state, stop it.
Galaviz tells me state police are now coordinating a statewide multi-agency investigation.
You're talking about, the false reporting. Again, you talked about potential, threats, but also threats to public officials. So again, there's a potential multitude of potential criminal violations at play here.
And on that note, it's worth noting the General Assembly passed a new law just this spring to toughen the penalties for swatting. It's now a felony if it would make a reasonable person feel terrorized or intimidated. That could net you up to 30 months in prison. I'm Garrett Berquist for Wish TV and WishTV.com.
Well, state lawmakers met for their annual Organization Day on Tuesday and then adjourned until January 5th. They had planned to meet during the first 2 weeks of December to redraw the congressional maps. But Senate Republicans say they don't have the votes. Here's what Senate leaders had to say after the legislature adjourned.
A number of our caucus members, myself included, don't see this as a binary choice between the 7-2 ratio that you have right now and redistricting and getting to an automatic 9-0. Think about it, it's November right now. We don't know what those districts are. There is no preeminent candidate in either of those seats that is a person that's going to be able to run for that seat that we know will have strong support and potentially win. There'll be a primary race indefinitely, assuredly, if we did that. And that person, whoever would come out of it, hasn't had day one going to a parade or a festival and hasn't started on day one yet to raise $1 of money for that campaign. So we feel like we would not necessarily get to a 9-0 map or 9-0 ratio at that point in time. So we're trying. We're trying to do the best thing for the state of Indiana and as well as for the United States of America. One other thing, I guess I'll talk about why we decided not to come in today. We typically, when there's an issue, if we know we don't have the votes for it, we don't typically come in. This, I recognize, is a little bit of a different issue, it's got a little more attention than some of our more public bills. But that is typically how we handle that when we don't have the votes to pass it. And as you can see from the resolution that we passed today, that passed. And so I think that's moderately or fairly indicative of the vote that you might have seen if we were to vote on the redistricting issue itself.
I think, again, we stayed very focused on what we were hearing from our constituents, and I would venture to guess that every single legislator in this body did the same. And so I'm proud of the work that the Indiana Senate Democrats have been doing throughout the interim, especially around this issue of redistricting, and taking it very seriously, because when it comes to changing the rules mid-decade, those have big consequences, and it's been the Hoosiers who have made their voices loud and clear again and again, poll after poll, making sure that legislators know where they stand on this issue. Senate Democrats are ready to look forward, look to 2026. So many Hoosiers are looking at the price tag of groceries, utility rates, housing and affordability, childcare and accessibility and affordability. And again, we're going to make sure that Hoosiers know that we are working for them. We are listening to them. And I think today we saw the votes that showed that.
Governor Mike Braun, meanwhile, says that he plans to use every means at his disposal to compel lawmakers to return to the State House and vote, and says he'll help anyone who tries to primary senators who did not support new maps. He talked to our Hannah Mordeau shortly after Organization Day concluded.
Over the years, if you look at the last maps that Democrats did in our own state, it was a gerrymandering mess. In other words, there were all kinds of tentacles, or they refer to it as salamanders, and they then nationally have done the same thing. And when you look at a place like Illinois, it's got 17 congressional seats. The last election, it went 47-53. It's normally more like 52-48. But it's moving to become more and more red, yet of their 17 congressional districts, they've gerrymandered so far into central and southern Illinois that there are only 3 Republican seats. You look at the 6 bluest states outside of California in the Northeast, control 3 times as many electoral votes. They've been gerrymandered for 20 years. And I'll get to the part about where our Senate is. And then you look at how people are counted into the census. Of course, illegal immigrants are counted into it, and that's estimated to be between 20 and 25 million, 750,000 per district. California, Illinois, New York have inherent advantages there. So President Trump asked all Republican states, started with Texas, Missouri, North Carolina did it promptly. We were asked, and we've been dragging our feet because the Senate was against it from the get-go. And that's out of character with almost all other states. So nearly 20 of Republican senators, which is half the caucus, were for it, if not a few more, when Rod Bray pulled the plug by saying he wasn't coming back. I just want it to be a public discussion to where you get them in the public on a vote without hiding behind closed doors. He's pulled that, and I don't think that's representative of his own caucus. And just yesterday, to adjourn until January, he had to get Democrats on vote to actually do that because half of his Republican caucus was against it.
He has heard from constituents saying we don't want to redistrict. The Indiana code says that this gets done after a census. That is every 10 years. We're halfway through that. He's hearing from.
It can be done between. You can do that.
But if
the code said that, you wouldn't do it in the first place.
But it's supposed to be done every 10 years
traditional.
after the census.
It's traditional.
Constituents are telling the lawmakers, senators, that they don't want this.
So you want to hear who those constituents have been? Nearly 100% Democrats and moderate and liberal independents. Republicans haven't been loud on it. Now they're getting louder when they look at what is at stake, or when you explain the unfairness of the current configuration. And President Trump has talked to them twice. J.D. Vance has been in here twice. And it has been moving from there are more senators publicly for it than there are against it. And the others have been hiding behind the fact that Rod Bray is not bringing it to a public discussion, just like the House is going to do.
He says there are not the votes. Do you just want to see the votes publicly?
We want to, yes, because that's because he doesn't want to do it. And then he's got his leadership team and a few others that are staying with him. We want to get it to where you do that publicly, because it was cascading so quickly. That is when he made the move just recently to say that they're not coming back in session. Two things. Half of his caucus is for it now with that vote that we saw yesterday, and there are 4 or 5 others that if you bring it into a public discussion, we think we'll get there. If not, then he's at least done the minimum obligation. Don't hide, come into session, have it in a public discussion. That's what is minimally being asked.
You have said that you will compel the Senate to bring this to a vote. How so?
Compelling is not the right word. It's going to be discussing it and urging it, because Rod Bray will have sole responsibility if it doesn't come to a public discussion. He is in control there, and he has now lost half his caucus that want to do it, and there are another 5 or 6 we think will come along if it's a public discussion. If not, then he's done what he needed to do, is not hide, don't escape, don't walk out. The House has just shown him yesterday that they're going to do it. And that was a big indication, and they had the votes for it and said so publicly, and they're going to bring that to the public forum. He needs to do the same thing.
Finally, before we go, are you feeling pressure from President Trump to do this?
No, on all these issues, it's one of many, and Indiana has been lucky when it comes to all the other things going on that are important to our state. We've got a good relationship there. He clearly is upset that they have dawdled on this. And now, after yesterday, it's clear that Rod is digging in at this point, and it's going to be up to him once the House does do something. And if he digs in again, and then he's made a political decision that he'll have to live with in the long run, and it'll be clear who stopped what has not been stopped in any of the other states.
Okay, Governor Braun, thank you for being here.
Coming up, we turn to Indiana's best political team to unpack those lawmaker threats and the fallout from Organization Day. All right, welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome in 2 members of Indiana's best political team, Republican Allie Bartlett and Democrat Dana Black. Good to see you both. Thank you so much for stopping by. I want to begin with the threats against Republican state senators who don't publicly support redistricting. Allie, we'll start with you. How concerned should we be that these threats could actually turn to violence?
I mean, I think anytime we have these threats, it is concerning, and we should take them seriously. Obviously, we haven't gotten any sort of message or indicator about what is causing them, but, this is a contentious issue. It's something that's getting national attention at this point, and so anytime we have these types of threats, I think there is a concern that they could result in actual violence, and it's something to be taken seriously.
Dana, it's getting a little ridiculous.
It's past ridiculous, and I would say that the actual swatting is political violence. I know that the senators ought to be kind of lucky that they're white males, because we know when black folks get swatted, they have a tendency to be more violent. Law enforcement can be more violent. So I think they ought to thank their privilege that no real harm, and that law enforcement is investigating things the right way. But here's the deal. It's unfortunate when you put out tweets and you put out social media messages about we need to target these particular senators because they don't agree with us. You don't know who you're speaking to. You're speaking to people who may not have it all together, and they take that as a call to action.
Yeah.
So I think the rhetoric needs to be toned down, obviously, from all the political voices. But yeah, this is scary. This is a scary time because it can happen to anybody at any time.
Dana, as you very well know, several of the Republican senators are undecided about this issue. Do you think this sways them either way, yes or no?
Well, hopefully not. Hopefully they're not. They won't be cowards and shrink to the terrorism, and that's what it is. When you threaten their home, threaten their business, threaten their lives, that's terrorism. They should again take notes from the folks in the civil rights movement when those types of situations happen to black folks in the South, or the women's suffrage movement when they try to threaten women when they were advocating for the right to vote. Take from history and learn from it and find the resolve to stand on what you believe in.
Allie, I'll let you respond to that too.
No, I mean, obviously, we are never going to advocate that people give in to threats of violence. And I think, one great example that we've seen of that is Charlie Kirk. His assassination has resoundingly inspired people to continue to stand on their morals. And he was a symbol for that. And obviously, even since that time, we've continued to take threats of political violence even more seriously. I don't think there's ever a place for violence in politics and what we're doing here. So to the extent that that continues to happen, it should not be a part of this.
Okay, Dana, Allie, stick with us. Much more to come. We'll be right back after the break. All right, welcome back to All Indiana Politics. With us, of course, once again, Dana Black and Allie Bartlett. Good to see you both once again. Let's turn the conversation to redistricting, okay? Because, Allie, as you very well know, the debate still ranges on. So where do we stand, and do you think that we'll see any movement before January 5th?
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to keep in mind that the discussion is not over. I think a lot of people have come out saying, oh, it's over in Indiana, it's over. It's not over. The discussion continues, as we heard from Governor Braun. I think that this is still open for debate and something that's possible here. I mean, there was a Politico article that came out just today with polling showing 64% of Republicans in the state of Indiana support the concept of redistricting. And so at this time, I think it's important, we're talking so much about listening to constituents. 64% of Republicans in the state support this. And so it's something that I think we really need to continue to talk about. We're talking about fair representation here. The governor supports this. The Speaker of the House has come out in support of this. The entire House Republican caucus supports this. It's something that should, at the very least, be brought for a vote before the Indiana General Assembly.
Dana, go ahead.
If we're voted down, we're voted down, but the vote needs to happen.
I find it odd that the argument is that we're talking about fair representation. How do you say fair representation is taking away the voice of 40% of your state? So maybe 60% of Republicans, but you still have to add in that other 40% of Hoosiers. And they are saying, we're gonna disenfranchise you to enfranchise us in D.C. So that says black folks, Latinos, Indianapolis, Lake County, your voices don't matter. We're going to take those away. And to make the argument that we're going to make fair maps by saying 40% of the people shouldn't have representation in Washington is hypocrisy.
Allie is shaking her head.
No,
Go ahead. I'll let you respond before I move on.
That's not what we're saying here, obviously. And I would also point to the fact that I think we're missing this in this whole conversation. Any maps that are redrawn also have to withstand scrutiny of the courts. And so what we're talking about here, the discussion that's at hand right now, is whether or not the General Assembly should take this up for a vote so that Hoosiers can see where their lawmakers stand on the issue of redistricting. This should come for a vote. The House has expressed willingness to do that, and the Senate needs to take it up for a vote as well.
But the issue is, why do you need to redistrict? Why? Why don't you just run on the policies that are imploding on every Hoosier, right? Why don't you just...
I have a minute left. To your point, though, we've seen demonstrations against it and for it. It seems like the demonstrations against it are larger than the ones that are for it.
They are, because, again, why the money that you're going to spend on redistricting, you should have addressed the tax cuts that never happened. All of the policies that they say they're going to bring to the Hoosiers to make their lives better, everything is more expensive and folks are suffering, but they want to spend their energy and time redistricting a map that they said 5 years ago was perfect, where 40%, It's 9-2.
Allie?
We wouldn't be
7-2.
spending
Close this out.
any.
About 30 seconds left. Go ahead.
We
9-0
would
says I'm
not
taking
be
your voice
spending
away.
any additional taxpayer dollars to
9-0 takes
uptake
voices away.
redistricting during a regular session at this point. This is something that needs to come before the legislature
It does
for a
not.
vote.
It
this
does
is
not.
something that is important to Hoosiers. It's important for the country. It's,
When you
it's a
say
topic
9-0,
that's at
that
hand.
means you don't want
And this is
40%
now
of the
a
citizens to
situation
have
where it's
representation in
Republican states
Washington.
versus Democrat states, and we need to ensure that Hoosiers' voices continue to be heard in Washington.
Then how can
This is up to
40% of
Senator
Hoosiers be
Bray
heard when you
and
take
the
away their
Indiana Senate to
representation?
take up
We
for
can take the
9-0
conversation
take up
offline.
for
We're out of
a vote
time.
now.
Happy Thanksgiving to you both. Thank you so much.
Happy Thanksgiving!
We'll be right back. Thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics. We'll be back here, of course, next Sunday morning at 9:30. And be sure to check out the All Indiana Politics podcast online at wishtv.com. Have a great rest of your weekend and a happy Thanksgiving.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.